would have wanted to fly beyond the last red eye, talking to your voice, only hearing noise. Oh, it's not enough. All of the nights I spent drowning my discontent, wasting me away.
Something about Benson Boone's voice that I really like that. I guess I've always been more singer-songwriter, and I suppose he exudes that somewhat.
He writes, I think he participates in writing his songs.
Yeah.
But he made a joke at the concert. There's a lyric in one of his new songs, Moonbeam Ice Cream.
Okay.
So the song is kind of like poppy, and he's been catching some flack for it because people said that he kind of sold out with it. I think it was on Jimmy Fallon, and they talked about it, and they ended up eating like a gallon of some company named their ice cream Moonbeam Ice Cream because of Benson Boone.
That's funny.
He made some jokes about it on the concert. He said, if you saw me on Fallon the other night, you may know that we talked about Moonbeam Ice Cream. I don't know what it means. You don't know what it means. He said it really doesn't matter. Leave it alone. He was actually hilarious during the concert. He
seems to have a real good personality.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah.
I was telling you, I brought a friend who had never heard him before, and he left saying that he was a fan.
Yeah.
At one point, he did that whole thing where someone threw their phone up on the stage. And so he grabbed the phone and he made a joke. Oh, she's got Snapchat. And started, Snapchatting her friends and saying things. And then he's got a song called Pretty Slowly. And she was wasted, I guess. And so he handed the phone back to her and he said, so there you go, take that. He goes, and drive home pretty slowly. So now I'm going to sing Pretty Slowly, which is how you should get home tonight.
That's really funny. Dr. Rice, I always think it's very interesting the path people go. Like what took you, the academic, to keep going on the mental health and the doctorate program? Because that's a lot of work, man, and that's a lot of work. And I will tell you, having done what not that they're mindless, that's not right, but more physical than writing a paper at times is more exhausting than building a brick wall.
It's a different kind of exhausting.
But I mean, it like energy, really can drain you.
It can, I think, mainly because of the rewrites and being able to accept feedback and things like that, right? That's the difference between, I think, writing something and building a brick wall, right? You build a brick wall, you get all this energy out, you stand back and you can look at it and you can admire what you did, and no one's going to come and say, oh, you put that brick in the wrong place and put a different brick in there, right? Writing, it's like you build that brick wall and then you got to knock it down, and then you build again, and then someone comes over and points something out and you got to knock it down, and then over time you're just knocking down little parts and rebuilding those, right? But and so, I think that's, for me, probably the difference between writing and building a brick wall. And I think I've said on here before, it's also a way of just sharpening your tools, right?
Yeah.
25% of the time, 25, we got one of my mentors, Dr. McCabe, who is a woodworker, and he suggests that no matter, what we want to do, if it's meaningful, we should dedicate 25% of our time to sharpening our tools, which basically means, we're not going to get, 100% productivity out of a day, right? We're going to get, 25% of that was sharpening our tools and helping us do what we need to do. And that's okay. Right? We're not going to do the other 75% really well unless we dedicate that 25% to sharpening.
I think that's yes. I've heard him say that, and I think that that's very true, and something that many times we don't do. So sitting in the practice of whatever it is, even exercise or meditation, all of it is sharpening your tools, your body, your
you want to see results, right?
Yes.
You want to see results.
Exactly.
And so if you're not seeing results, then you got to make sense of it somehow.
But I've been impressed because I remember saying to you, how are you doing all this? And you said to me,
I don't watch TV.
Yeah. I just go and do it. And I was asked for an intention for the healing that I had. And I said, I want to have follow through. That's what I want, follow through. And it made me think of you because I go, boy, Dr. Ray, I mean, everything from your daughter is an elite athlete with
She
field
just
hockey.
got picked for
I heard.
just Thursday. She got she's the only kid in Western New York to make it to the Nationals for USA field hockey. So there's 113 girls from around the whole country who got chosen for this. It's in Virginia Beach in July, and 27 of them will end up being on the U.S. national team.
Yeah.
And then
U.S. national team. Is this the Olympic team or
Yeah.
potentially,
Yeah.
or is this the under like a certain?
Well, I
age?
think it changes every year, right? And so some of the girls would be potentially on the Olympics. You know, my
Yeah.
daughter's young right now; she's only 16.
Yeah.
But that's the pathway. This is the
Yeah.
You know, you get to nationals, you make it, and then
It's incredible.
yeah. It's so cool. It's
How did that come about?
she grew up playing ice hockey. So at some point I got to talk to Kevin, and
Yeah.
I respect him so much as a hockey
He's
dad
up
because
today.
I know
He's
how
St. Lawrence University, maybe
that's
today?
where my oldest daughter goes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess
And
where he
great
is today.
hockey program. And yeah, I respect any hockey parent. It's a lot of
It's a
work.
lot.
It's a lot of work, a lot of travel.
But I mean, you
So
made
she started
videos
there.
for her, and yeah.
Yeah, she started playing ice hockey, and then that kind of she learned how to play really fast. And then when she started playing field hockey, it was just kind of comically good because she was used to playing on the ice, and now everything was moving slow for her.
Right.
And so it's so much fun to watch. I love it.
She wow. And then she's going college on a scholarship.
Yep. She's going to Wagner, which is so now I got to talk to Doug.
Yep.
Because he went to Wagner.
Wagner.
When I listened to the podcast,
Yes, he was a wrestler.
I'm like, oh my God, I got to talk to that guy for that. So yeah, I got to get
funny.
Doug's impression. So she's going to Wagner to play D1 field hockey. And we'll see
That's
where it goes from there.
amazing.
Yeah, man, the process is ridiculous. Like I feel something again. You've got Jameson's a freshman right now. I know he got some aspirations around basketball. Yep. You know, it's not too early to really start thinking about these things. You know, we probably were a year late getting Ava started in the recruiting process. You know, the D1 programs their kids are committing in their sophomore year.
I think I just read a young man from Monroe High School.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a junior, committed to Oregon football.
I saw that on I saw that on Primetime on their Primetime 585 Instagram feed.
Yeah, kids like I go, wow, that's impressive. But you have another year of high school.
Yeah, well, and actually, it's late to commit to to a school like Oregon. You know, I'm going to guess that he was one of their last commits because most big D1 programs now the kids are committing their sophomore year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem right? Like
it doesn't.
Like they
it feels
need more
like
time to develop.
Yeah, and all of a sudden somebody shoots up, and I don't know
for sure.
Yeah. So this has got to be a big deal in the family for everybody.
Yeah, it's exciting for sure.
I think it would be. I mean, to me, it's amazing, and I love that I love your enthusiasm with it. Your post, and you've been along for the ride. You've really been the passenger in this, but given us all a view of it.
It's the greatest. I'm her equipment manager.
Yeah,
and it's the greatest. I'm probably the last person she wants to hear from, but when I have those rare moments where she wants to know what I think about something, and it's fantastic. I've got 3 daughters, and they're all super different. My oldest is mountaineer. She's guiding this summer in the Adirondacks.
Cool.
She's living in a yurt on an island for the fall semester. Instead of studying abroad, she's going and living on an island in a yurt for the whole semester, and her professors will paddle out to her, each week.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
St. Lawrence University.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then
what time of year is this?
In the fall.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna be crazy. And there's no showers, there's no running water, there's no electricity. It's badass. I'm so impressed.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I'm jealous and kind of like amazed that she would want to do this, but yeah, she does. And then Ava's the field hockey player, and then I got a 12-year-old who's a puppy parent at the moment.
That's great. Yeah. Yes, a new puppy in the house.
Yeah. A lot of questionable decisions happening this spring.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It makes it all fun.
Sure.
It makes it interesting.
Interesting for sure.
So you, with your daughters, and then I know you see a lot of youth through MindFit Gym.
Yeah, so MindFit is my private practice, and
I love the name, by the way.
Appreciate that.
Only because I think that is absolutely the best way to look at mental health.
Well, that was the original idea, right? And it's still somewhere there in my mind. And you and I are in a similar place in life, and that I think it feel kind of the time clock ticking, right?
Oh yeah, I said that
both
the other
have-
day. I go, if the average human lives to 78 in America, and I got 24 years left, I gotta get moving.
Yep. And so that's motivation. And this is all that the idea for MindFit came about 10 years ago. And what I really wanted to do is wanted to essentially create a gym for mental health.
Yeah.
And so the idea, I see a lot of people who are neurodivergent, people on the autism spectrum, and I use a lot of like biofeedback and neurofeedback and that type of technology in my work, video game stuff. And so I wanted to create a space where we would have all that technology available, stations for positive thinking, stations for mindfulness, stations for biofeedback, things like that, just like you'd see, stations for different, muscle groups in a gym, and then have interns from St. John Fisher, essentially play the role of trainer. And then instead of having you come to an appointment and talk about your problems type model, right? We would have, sure, you could access individual group counseling. But once you feel like you've got what you need, we can provide the biofeedback technology. We can provide, the tools that you need to come in and practice that on your own. And so like a gym, you would come in and use your membership, and there might be a class going one day on mindfulness that you could participate in if you're a member. And so, yeah, that's still the kind of vision, is that we would have essentially a gym for mental health.
I love it, because I do think that I don't know if we look at, you hear a lot about mental health awareness.
Yeah.
But what's the next step beyond awareness that society needs to know about?
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that because here's why. Often I'll hear things that would fall under mental health. It's my anxiety, but it's said in a glib way.
Yeah.
Like, almost as though and I thought, how do you make meaningful change in those areas when I don't know that we fully grasp or understand what mental health is? And just like your body, if you're not going to the gym, slowly you gain the weight and you get out of shape and you can't lift as much, and you can't, because you're not exercising those muscles. And that's why I love the idea of the MindFit gym. But what in mental health, how do we kind of change that with everybody?
Yeah, I think part of it's the words we use, right? I don't love the term mental health issues, right? It's mental illness. Let's call it what it is, right? You mentioned anxiety. When I teach anxiety, how to work with anxiety to my graduate students in Fisher, the first thing I do is I have them, get in groups and come up with a sentence without using Google that they can all agree on. A one sentence definition of anxiety, right? And 9 out of 10 times that definition is something like, excessive worry that causes, pain and it makes it hard to do the things you need to do in your life. It's all sorts of really problem-based ideas. And I know that I'm doing this when I ask them to do this activity, but I'm really catching them to remind them, hey, I know you've been in school to learn about mental illness all this time and how to treat mental illness. Anxiety isn't a mental illness. We need anxiety. Anxiety is super important, right? When I work with athletes, when we talk about anxiety, and how to manage anxiety, right? That's where we start, was with the kind of the definition of that word, right? Most athletes will say, well, anxiety is it's what makes me think that I can't do something, or prevents me from doing
Fear.
what I want to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
And I said, no, anxiety means that you care, right? And what would you rather be doing than something you care about?
Yeah.
Right. And if you can really reframe it that way, right? Like, remember, okay, I'm feeling this way, name it, right? I'm feeling this way because I care, right? Rename it. This is because I care, right? And then remind yourself, what would I rather be doing right now than something I care about?
That's great. Yeah.
Right.
But sometimes it is that simple switch. And I think sometimes when you say, I think mental health is easier for people to digest than mental illness.
Yeah.
Right. Because I can't be mentally ill. Right. So why would you say that? And I do think that there are things like, depression, where does that fall? Would that be mental illness? And is there such a thing as mild versus severe? And where does it fall in there? And I think,
great example.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's sadness.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And there's reactive depression, right?
Sure.
And you grieve after you lose
right.
someone important to you,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
and so yes, yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of still, we say mental health awareness. And maybe the next step is to build some more refined awareness around these concepts and these ideas, because I think people put things like depression and anxiety all in one bucket.
Yeah.
And they're really not.
They're not.
Depression is adaptive, right? The reason why we stay in our room and don't want to do the things we normally want to do and things like that when we're depressed is because our body's telling ourselves it's not safe for you to go out right now, right? It's not. Right. And so it certainly can't be like that forever. You're going to lose your job, right? But there's reasons why we have these emotions, and if we can name them, and if we can recognize that these things all exist on a spectrum, then I think that goes a long way.
That does go a long way.
I was talking to you about externalization, right? And the idea that, really from my perspective, a good, so I practice narrative therapy is my primary approach. I use a lot of CBT. And the first step in either of those approaches is to externalize the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And that would include things like anxiety or any diagnosis that we might give someone, right? And so as soon as the problem comes up in therapy for me, I'm no longer even looking at the person when I talk about the problem. I'm looking next to them as if the problem is sitting there next to them, right? Because that's going to force me to change my language. So now instead of saying, when you're anxious, I'm going to say when anxiety's around, right? Because anxiety has become another character in your story. And by doing that,
it's not defining you either.
It's not defining you. It's not becoming part of your identity. And maybe even more importantly, because I work with kids, right? Mm-hmm. It allows, the parents to unite with the child against the problem. Right. And so, now we're together looking at the problem, examining it objectively, instead of the child feeling like, the problem exists within them, and anything that someone tells them is going to be, approached with judgment because they're going to feel judged.
Wow. That's really, really insightful.
Yeah, it's really, those are common therapy techniques.
No,
right?
but I don't know if they are. I have no idea.
People don't know, but they are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, and it's amazing to me, but I just feel like mental health has become a buzzword.
It is, like mindfulness.
Right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mindfulness. And I would say that you have to do. I think that's the real work in life. Not so much of the mindfulness, but maybe. But the real work is the idea that I'm going to look away from the problem and focus on something that's going well. And when I do that, I feel better and my mental health is better.
And you say that all the time, right? Focus on the better feeling thought.
Well, the better feeling thought. Yes. I even sometimes, I often sometimes go, well, okay, easy to say, right? But I could have 4 things going well, 1 going bad. If I focus on the 1 going bad, everything goes right in the shitter. So how do I keep it this way? And sometimes I think like that's where I often believe that we have misinterpreted Jesus, and the idea of turn the other cheek was to turn away from focusing on the problem and let's focus over here. And you almost like sometimes even if you hurt yourself, if you start to think of something else, it goes away. Or a child, you try to distract the child from whatever just happened, and they're laughing and running and playing within seconds versus 5 minutes of crying over something that really wasn't.
And it doesn't mean you're ignoring the problem either, right? Like
no.
When I start, I don't even talk about a problem in therapy usually until late in the first session. We're spending a lot of time talking about strengths and things, like interests and strengths and things like that.
To show you all the good stuff.
Well, and actually there's research that says that you learn more about someone's problems if you ask about their strengths. Right. If you ask someone about their strengths, they're going to have a hard time. They're going to start to talk about it. They're going to say, I like to do this, but anxiety gets in the way and I can't. Right. And they're going to oftentimes be more open to and more, forthright with what their, what the problems are if you're asking them about their strengths, because they're, you're at that point, you're not the expert judging them. You're someone who's trying to understand them as a person.
Right.
And so the research is pretty clear that you can actually learn more about someone's problems by asking them about their strengths. And then there's another narrative therapy technique called reauthoring, which is essentially shining a light on moments of competence and asking people what they notice. Right. And so you're not ignoring the problem, right? You're focusing on an example outside of the problem, right? If someone's late all the time and they show up one day on time, then spend a lot of time talking about that, right? Like, how'd you do it that time? That's awesome. Like,
Yeah,
how'd you get here on time?
right.
What did you change about, right? Really, instead of focusing on how come you're late all the time, right? And
We
again,
did it this one time.
exactly, right? Because it becomes a self-fulfilling
It
prophecy,
does,
right?
yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
kids live up to our expectations. We live up to the expectations that we have for ourselves. I was telling you about some really cool research that looks at free will that I learned about recently. I have one of my clients, his father is probably got the coolest job I've ever heard. It's a neuroscience philosopher. And
I've
so
never heard of such a thing. That's
he
amazing.
teaches neuroscience philosophy at RIT, and so he talks about the origins of consciousness and all that kind of stuff that we talk about in the group and think that we're understanding at a higher level.
I don't.
And you do. You're right in there. And so he shared with me some really cool research around free will, and they've done some studies where they've examined hooked people up to EEG monitors, and they looked at their brain activity while giving them certain tasks or things like that. And consistently, there's brain activity in an area suggesting that they're going to do something before they actually become consciously aware that it's something that they might do, right? And so the evidence says that something in our brain is happening before we make any decision, before we're any consciously aware of any decision, right? As if, as we talk about sometimes, there's this universal consciousness that's feeding us, right? And so from that perspective, there is no free will. But there's also, a strong evidence that we can say no, right? So once that impulse, once we are urged to do something, we can say, by the universe, we can say, no, I'm not going to do that, right? And so there's no free will, but there is free won't, right?
Yeah, I love that, because I never thought of it that way, but you're right, because not everybody, but people will tell you, tap into the higher consciousness.
Yes.
There are people who say the human brain isn't capable of whatever kind of thoughts. Don't get mad at yourself for feeling this way, but try to tap in to the higher self, the higher consciousness.
The software, right? We're the hardware. The higher consciousness is the software.
Yes, and those are where inspiration comes from. That's where all these great ideas are, and then you need to be the follow through for that stuff. And it's a different. I think you say that to enough people on the street, they'll think they'll have you locked up.
Again, right?
Or attempt to, or gonna run away real fast. Going, that guy's gonna be homeless in a week.
Right?
And it bothers me, because I think, I think we've been taught wrong. I think meaning well, but I think taught wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we're always doing our best, right?
Yes.
How many?
A
couple hundred years ago, we were drilling holes in people's heads to let the demons out.
I know. I just saw an article about
that. Was the thing to do, and we were doing our best at the time. We were trying to help people, right? But now, I believe 50 years from now, we're going to look at the medicines that we're using now the same way we looked at drilling holes in people's heads to let the demons out.
It is interesting. Today, also, I really feel like this may be the biggest impact on mental health today is our hyperconnectivity.
Yeah.
I mean, we are hyperconnected in the world. And what do you see as the most underestimated psychological challenge people face? And is there a way to build resilience against it?
As it pertains to,
I would say the hyperconnected digital world. The hyperconnected digital world, meaning everything from FaceTime to whatever. I mean, I can see anything I want to see in my hand right now. And I'm not sure that is a good thing.
Yeah. It's like anything, right? Like there's two sides to that coin. I don't know. I think if anyone tries to tell you they know what the harmful effects of are being so connected to technology are, I think that I don't think anybody knows.
Right.
I think from my perspective, anything that pulls you from nature is concerning, right? And so and that doesn't mean that being connected to technology precludes you from being connected to nature, right? there is clear evidence, and there's a guy named Richard Louv who wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods. It's a really good book that reviews all the literature that looks at the relationship between nature and development. And there's clearly evidence to suggest that kids who don't have as much exposure to nature don't develop in the same way as kids who do, and oftentimes end up with issues around focus and anxiety and depression and things like that. There's actually a movement right now in Australia to create a new diagnosis called nature deficit disorder, which would be used as an alternative to attention deficit disorder for kids who we think their issues with focus could be attributed to lack of exposure to nature. And so for me, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about not being as connected to our natural world as we need to be, because we are, like we started this whole podcast, right? It's not just that we're connected to everything.
Yeah.
Right. There's quantum, and that's, from a non-woo-woo, more scientific perspective, right? There's, some cool quantum stuff going on around us, right? And we know from research that our quantum connection to things like trees and nature is important. And so that's what worries me about our connection to technology, is that it pulls us away from some of those things that are just inherently healthy and important for us, especially during development.
During development, and things, do you see the hyperconnectivity, but maybe constant exposure to, I don't know, the grass is greener over here, I want this, I wish I could have, affecting self-esteem?
It's dopamine, right? It's those dopamine hits, right? There's that. It's every time, and so I'm sure that there's some of that, right? There's I'm sure I look a lot, happier and more successful on my social media profile than I really am, right? And when you see that, constantly all day long, and your friends and other people, then I'm sure it has the tendency to make you feel not great about yourself. Again, that's not my main concern. But I do think that you do get these dopamine hits from getting likes and stuff like that, and there's research that says that there's a problem that's problematic as well.
Yeah, I always think that if you can help someone get their self-worth from within than without, that's hard in this world.
It's maybe the most important thing about
that's where things like
identity,
like with you writing the book, and then, hey, now I feel like I could write another book. That to me is the real self-esteem stuff. But then I read research that says compassion is more important than self-esteem. Or maybe I should say, change the word to over. They would put self-compassion over self-esteem in terms of the overall mental health balance.
Yeah. So
and I don't know.
I don't know either. What I like about the idea of self-compassion is you're allowing for mistakes, you're allowing for imperfection, right? And you're giving yourself
more in a world that rewards perfectionism,
right? And so the self-compassion addresses that more, right? Whereas self-esteem, I suppose, could get away from you, and you could become at some level narcissism. So I like that element of self compassion, but I think that they're two different things, and I think that self-esteem in kids is important, and that's my criteria for when I have a parent who comes to me with a kid whose doctor wants to prescribe them a stimulant. Right. My criteria is as to whether or not they should go with it and take the medicine is how's the kid's self-esteem, right? If the kid feels like they're falling behind and everybody's looking at them and they feel bad about themselves because they know they could do better, but they're just trying their best and they're not, and it's really hitting their self-esteem, then give them the stimulant. It's going to help. And the problems that can happen from having a damaged self-esteem during development far outweigh the risks of the stimulant, right? If the kid's fine, if they don't really notice that other people are performing better than them, they still got good self-esteem, they seem content, right? Then hold off. You can always catch up on the academic stuff. But a stimulant's gonna stunt your growth, right? And so I'd rather have the kid grow appropriately, and then we'll catch up on the academic stuff as long as their self-esteem's okay.
That's interesting, because the self-esteem is so important, and yet I feel like so fragile sometimes with young people. I mean, even heck, people.
People.
I'll put it to just people. I mean, adults too.
I would have been awful if we had the social media and all the stuff that we had. I would have been so fragile. Are you kidding me? Like I would have been a mess.
I would have been. I would have been in trouble,
right? And so
I'm just thinking of this poor girl who we superimposed her face over a cow.
Oh God!
In a Photoshop, not even Photoshop, in a photography class,
being like a
and then hung it,
idiot.
and then somebody hung it in the office window.
Oh God!
And changed her name to cow.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was horrible. That person would probably be sitting across from you, and I just go, this stuff is terrible. I wouldn't want that done to my kids. I wouldn't want that. It happens all the time, so fast. We don't even know. No. You know, it's almost impossible for parents to know.
No, it's processed information, right? Like we don't want our kids to have processed food. This is processed information. Right?
Man, that's a great.
It's the same idea.
Well, you wonder why they're in a bad mood. You wonder why what happened, and you don't know. But sometimes we as adults look at something online. It's not affecting us. It's not in our house. It's not here right now. It's not coming through our front door. And yet, it just makes us our whole demeanor changes, our mood changes, and we're not pleasant to be around, and no one knows why. Yep. And everybody's sort of walking on eggshells. And that's the stuff that I think is bad. And if you can, you hear the detox from the phone. I don't know. New York State just implemented the no touch law, where you are not allowed to touch your phone while behind the wheel, even at a stop sign.
I didn't know.
I know. No, many people don't.
Well, so I have the best excuse. I have type 1 diabetes.
You can.
And my phone controls my pancreas. And so, I could get out of it.
I think you could. Yeah. And if you're calling 911, you're okay. But
it's a good trick at concerts too. I've shown my, I never get. I'm cheap, so I get lawn seats at CMAC, but every once in a while,
they're just everything's so expensive. Oh my God!
And so I think it was the Chris Stapleton concert or something like that. We wanted to go into the shell just for a little bit. I think it might have been raining, and we wanted to get a closer look. And security came up, and I just quickly said, "My sugar's really low. I just can't move right now." And they said, "Oh, no problem, sir. Stay here as long as you want."
Yeah.
That's every once in a while you got to use it when.
Well, I was going to say,
awful in most ways.
I was going to say it's awful every other way. Why not use it to your advantage? We'll take a moment. I'd love to hear some of these quotes that AI interpreted, and a little bit about your last visit with Deep.
Sounds good.
And we'll get to that right after this.
I think I need to go to the bathroom now.
Okay. It's 5012.
Is the code.
Yes.
Right.
So
and I remember
go slowly because they changed the handle. Okay. And sometimes I type it in and I got to do it a second time.
Okay. 5012. And then another Guinness will.
Okay. 5012. Yeah.
we all agree the Special Olympics is a good program. It's great. I just feel like the guy who came up with it had to be like a real risk taker. You know what I mean? That's a wild thing to suggest for the first time. Some guy in a board meeting, like, I got an idea.
Did it go?
Yeah.
Now I hope that I'm not coming off too buzzed, because Doug's father came in here with a Manhattan for me. I did drink that. I
You're not
ate
coming across buzzed at all.
and I come in here and now I'm feeling like I'm going, oh God, hold my fucking thoughts. I'm going like an idiot in front of Rob.
No, you're doing good. You're not coming across buzzed at all.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get out of a whole financial freaking hole.
Just didn't cost with Jameson coming up and stuff that you didn't expect.
That and Jenna, so when we separated, I found out she hadn't paid taxes.
Oh,
4 years, Rob. I had so I've been chipping away at that, and then I go, I got to put that on hold on. Now I'm just like, this is, I'm running through walls. Whatever I want this over. I don't want to ever go through this again in my life.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, sometimes you need that motivation to get the stuff done that you need.
Yeah,
to get, right?
2 years of, I always said, ostrich. I stick my head in the sand. You know who's been really great for me, and thank you, is Diane. Good. She's been really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I thought I was hoping she'd be a good fit because
she's been great.
She's kind of no bullshit, and she
no bullshit.
Yeah,
which I love.
And she's got some life experience. She's I mean, she
been
didn't
around.
graduate that
she
long
knows
ago.
People from media. She sold media. She did everything. She's been very open about things with her life, and it's been good.
She likes to drink too.
Apparently, she and I were at Mulconnery's at the same time. I go, thank God I left. It's like I was there then. I go, no, I didn't see you. Thank fucking God.
It is awkward, isn't it? Running.
Well, you know what? With her, I don't know that I would feel that. I don't know why. Because again, I would say very genuine.
Uh-huh.
What you see is what you get. In the office, out of the office, I don't think it ever changes. And I really like people like that. Those are my kind of people.
That's good.
That's everybody in the wise counsel. That's who they are. I've seen Gene McCabe in session. I've seen him out of session. He's the same person. And it's never bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's what I really, really, really like.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to mute us. You seen him live? I have not.
I have. Yeah, at CMAC, he was great.
Yeah, I bet. Do you go a lot?
As I've gotten older, I've really grown to appreciate live music more and more.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say I go a lot. I get out at probably 3 or 4 concerts a season.
That's
summer,
pretty good.
Right? Yeah,
that's pretty good. And nowadays, that's an investment.
It is.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
What happened to? I remember, like the Stones paying damn near 100 years ago. I mean, I'm talking like early 90s. It was and thinking that was outrageous.
It's that Live Aid Ticketmaster deal they got going. It's everything ends up being aftermarket. You try to go on and buy the tickets. They've got bots buying all the tickets up before you can buy them. I've actually learned that if someone's playing in Canada, go up there. It's going to be half the price.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we did that last year. Went to Osheaga, which is in Montreal. And
beautiful.
It was great. Saw Noah Khan there, and it was paid like $100 for tickets for Noah Khan. There were 400 everywhere else.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and a lot of times too, I will tell people that, and I don't know what it does to the ticket price, but day of they'll release the friends and family usually because they always hold back, and that's how I got great seats to Hall & Oates,
Right.
because somebody knew the drummer.
Sometimes if you're willing to take the risk, that's what I do for the Bills games. For Bills games, I don't even, we go and we figure we might not get into the game, but we'll have fun tailgating. And so we go plan our tailgate, we go do our tailgate thing. And then right as the game's starting, we look to see if we can get something to get tickets. And it's every time it's worked. One time we were 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we did that, and we ended up getting box seats with O.J. Simpson.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, like we were in a, yeah.
Oh, this
I got a picture. Oh yeah,
this is the greatest.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was so we were in separate, like we were in the same kind of box area, but he had a different door, and I'm pretty sure at some point, like, because I saw him and I saw what was happening, and I just started laughing uncontrollably because it was just one of those kind of nervous, weird, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening type things. And he looked at me, as if, what's this guy laughing at me for? And he closed the door. And so I, in my fantasies, I think that like that night he was going to bed thinking, why was that guy laughing at me?
Did you get any picture or anything?
I got a picture of him with other people getting a picture. I didn't, it felt icky to get like a selfie with O.J. Simpson.
I am so with you on that. Yeah. But I find human beings just so interesting.
Oh, people are so wanting to get selfies with them.
Yeah.
They were smiling and so happy to get
so
pictures
interesting because OJ, for a lot of the people that were taking pictures, they never saw him carry a football. I will be honest with you. My dad was not a football fan. I became a football fan at a young age, but I was at an age where OJ was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a 49er. I didn't know he played for the Buffalo Bills.
I knew him as the actor in The Naked Gun.
Yeah, I had no idea. And then, of course, we know what happened in 93, 94, 94. Yeah. Yes. 94. And then the trial was 95. Yep. And just all of that. Right. And since then we've seen all the stuff, and then he died. But I would love to go on Twitter and hear his Twitter. I couldn't follow him. I tried to find
Twitter World.
Yeah. Hey, Twitter World. I found him interesting, intelligent, likable, all the things that made him what he was. I mean, come on. But yet the dark side to this guy, and I always wanted to know, like, what is in that head? And maybe you can even answer this to some degree without being the person, but how do you walk around? I'm not saying he did it. Yeah. I'm saying everybody thinks he did it. How do you walk around? Yeah. How do you show your face in public? How are you this thing? And then there is this weird thing in America where we come around full circle with people. We want you, we love when you're on top, and then we want to knock you off, and then we'll bring you back again. And I was just saying to the guys, because we taped an episode earlier, I go, Tom Cruise is an example of that. A few years ago, he's jumping on Oprah's couch, and we're calling him awful guy, and he's yelling about postpartum depression and the depression meds that Brooke Shields is on. And he's arguing with Matt Lauer, and we know what happened to Matt. Yeah. And we see all this stuff. And now, like, he was kind of, Tom Cruise, he's crazy, he's Scientologist, he's this. Now we're going, hey, you saved the movie industry during, right? I mean, do we not? You saved the movie industry during COVID. And oh, by the way, hell of a stuntman. Could have been a great stuntman. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure, I keep reading as I'm very excited for this ridiculous movie, F1, coming out. But it's the same people who produced the second Maverick movie, the Top Gun movie. And they said, we didn't want Tom.
I heard that. They thought he'd kill himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he would take it too far.
Yeah.
And I go, but again, somewhat of a full circle. OJ, I felt like went from hero to zero and almost back in some way. I mean, certainly got on the plus side of that, because every time he came to Buffalo, and I thought I couldn't, but I would certainly watch, because I want to say, what is that? And nothing else was ever, like, OJ did nothing else bad. Right. He stole his own stuff back, and they punished him for the murder.
Yeah, I think there was probably some domestic violence stuff. I think.
Oh, there was.
Yeah,
but prior to that, yes.
Right.
But we didn't know about it.
We didn't know about it. All right. I don't know how you would walk around having that. I tend to think that he did it.
Me too.
I thought your question was going to be around how can you, like, walk around how can you on one hand do that, something like that, and then
Yes.
on the other hand like be this larger than life person and go on Twitter and all that, and that's my answer to that is there's I think we assume that mental illness and violence are correlated, and they're not. People who are mentally ill are far more likely to be victimized than
sure, yeah.
And so there's only 2 diagnoses that have any correlation or relationship to violence, and that's a particular type of schizophrenia and a particular type of post-traumatic stress disorder. Outside of that, it's far less likely to have a mental illness, and so there's lots of reasons that cause violence and those types of things to happen. And
what is a
sociopath? A sociopath would be it's kind of more in the personality disorders category, right? So if you've heard of antisocial personality disorder, some people assume that means, oh, that person's not social. They won't hang out with you. They don't look you in the eye. That's actually the opposite. Usually, someone who has antisocial personality disorder they tend to be some of the most charming people that you're ever going to meet, like a person like OJ, right? And have absolutely no regard for rules or norms or in many cases your feelings or your well-being.
That I don't know. I thought I've read in the past that CEOs of companies have some of those traits. Not that they are sociopaths, but they have that cold-blooded, I don't want to say cold-blooded, ability to fire somebody, make hard decisions, make hard decisions that will affect people's lives for the betterment of the company, or we like to think that, but or whatever. But I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some research that says that people get to a high level oftentimes have some narcissistic qualities, but that's different than being a sociopath.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's just the OJ thing is I find it fascinating just watching people and how they interact with something like that, someone who's accused of that. And again, I'll say, I think he did it, but we never got a definitive answer in the court of law other than
glove didn't fit
a civil trial. But even there, at that point, you're kind of going, yeah, he ain't paying the money anyway. So, and he's not going to jail. So what's the real consequence of this? And I go, boy, how do I feel about this, and what's my reaction to it? And I go, I am fascinated by people and how they react to that. I'm fascinated by people and how they react to famous people. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how people function on it. I mean, some days I feel really stupid, but in general, I feel like I'm a relatively intelligent person, and life is hard.
Yes.
Right. And so I look around and I see like all the people who are somehow managing, and I'm like, how is everybody doing this?
But okay. So back to like what we talked about earlier and some of the Dr. Deep things that you have certainly experienced more than I have, but the idea that it's already done, just relax, the sayings that we've heard all our lives, let go and let God, let go and let it, but we can't. What is that? Why do we have to feel like we need to be in control of everything, where instead of go with the flow? It's so much harder to swim upstream than it is to just go with the flow.
I don't know, but I think the self has to do with it again.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have this connection to the self when we're in this body and living this life, and it helps keep us on track when we're in this life. Maybe if we were going with the flow all the time, right, then there would be that I'm assuming that the self exists for a reason, right?
Yes.
And that these mechanisms within us exist for a reason, right? But I also agree that it seems like everything, when you look at it from a quantum perspective, or all the stuff that we're learning about, it kind of doesn't matter. Everything's already been done. It's almost like, people talk about simulation theory, which I don't necessarily ascribe to, but I do like the idea of simulation theory from a therapeutic perspective, right? Because the idea is that we chose this life. Right. We chose, it's not that this is it's not that we're a player in someone else's game. We're still a player in our own game. We chose this life. People who talk about simulation theory, including quantum physicists and people like that, will say, that we, our soul at some level chose to play this life, and every difficult thing that happens in our life has already happened, but it's intended to be part of that game, and it's intended to be something that teaches us a lesson, right? And so even if that's a ridiculous theory, thinking about things from that perspective sometimes can be helpful, right? Because you can ask yourself, well, if I really did choose this, if this is a simulation, then what is this thing that I'm dealing with right now? What is it trying to teach me, right? Why did I choose to have that experience, and what did I think I needed to learn? And it's I think about just a better way to live.
100%. Right. And I think it also keeps you from blaming others, which is very easy to do and never solves your problem. Right. Yep. If it's not your fault, whose fault is it? And I'm not saying that we need to, maybe there's a softer word than fault, but that's the one we've all been conditioned to say. And I think sometimes when there are problems that arise, to look inside and go, okay, sit and be still. That's the thing, is I was going to say earlier too, is I think a lot of the answers we know, they're from inside. We know, whether it's the higher consciousness that's coming through, whatever it is, we kind of know. What we choose to do, again, it's not free will, but free won't, is then the thing. I love that. But I when I think about these things, I often think, okay, so in any moment you have a number of choices. It's easy to say, choose the one that's going to feel the best, do it to its fullest without any worry about the outcome of it all, and it'll all work out. And we've probably had experiences that we can all look back on and go, yeah, that's true. I did that there, but I didn't do it over here, and I didn't do it over here. And you know why I didn't do it over here? Is because you were a prick and I couldn't get it. You know what I mean? And we start pointing fingers and blaming things. And I think, that's the thing. It is all your fault, but fault's an ugly word. It certainly isn't one of compassion. And so that's where, like, well, you guys got a lot of work you got to do over there talking to people, because as I'm unraveling this, I'm thinking, boy, that's a lot to say to someone, is it's your fault, but it's not. And we can massage this thing, and there really is no meaning to any of it other than the meaning you apply to it. So what are you going to say? I'm a bad person for this, or I just made something that I thought was the right decision, and now I'm going to pivot over here because that didn't work the right way. I don't know. Have you read the 4 Agreements? I have not read the 4. I am certainly familiar with the 4 Agreements, but yes. Yeah, that's kind of, as I'm listening to you talk about it being everything being our fault, and that's for whatever reason, that's what's resonating with me, is this idea that it's everything happens. We have a role in everything, right? And without getting too woo, again, maybe instead of fault, it's your frequency, right? Yeah, it's that frequency that you're on that day. But ultimately, we're all still living in our own little drops of water, our own little bubbles, right? And so the 4 agreements are be impeccable with your word, which basically means, like, don't gossip, don't focus, when you're talking, don't make it a point to not always be trashing other people is part of what you're putting out there. That's so much fun to do. I know it is. That's the tough part, right? It is. That's the tough part. And there's sometimes it feels like they deserve it. Don't make any assumptions, right? Because assumptions are just killers, right? And that's part of getting back to, like, social media and our connection to technology. It's the intent, and I think we tend to make a lot of assumptions when we're seeing something on social media without the context. Right. Don't take anything personally. Yeah. Right. Yeah. These are easy things to say, but hard things to do. Right. And always do your best. Yeah. Right. Which doesn't mean that you're always going to be at your best. It means you're going to do your best on that day. If you're sick that day, then your best isn't going to be as good as the day before when you were feeling better, but you're doing your best on that day. Right. And so if you're doing all 4 of those things, then that idea of everything is your fault, I think, becomes less
it feels like you're getting boxed in a little bit less,
Yeah,
right? Because now,
right.
yeah, everything is under your control, including the way that you interpret things, including the way that you decide to, to name things, or, how much you allow things to get at you. Right. And so, yeah, I've heard you say that before. Everything's your fault. I don't disagree with it.
And I think that, yes, but the word is a harsh one.
The words are hard,
and it's a harsh one to kind of swallow. Well, what do you mean it's my fault? I didn't do that. But you have a play in that. You brought it in some way. You attracted that in some way. Our brains are, I think, an antenna, a magnet,
right?
Attracted that in. And
sometimes it goes the opposite way, right? It's sometimes you're so high, right? You're on such a high, your frequency is so high, and you're feeling so great about something. I've had to watch myself with this lately because of the good news with my daughter and the puppy and that kind of stuff.
The zone.
But I'm noticing myself feeling really good, right? And people who aren't feeling really good, they find people who are feeling good and they try to bring them down, right? And there's people that will say that you don't need to actually even be with the person who's not in a good place or in a more vulnerable place to be impacted by their negative energy, right? And so I think that there's also this kind of art to not letting yourself get too high either, right? It's imagine kind of life is on a circle, right? And most people are just riding it like a ride, and they're happy up here and things are great, and then they're kind of meh, and then they're down here and things aren't very good, and you're just feeling it in the moment, right? But if you kind of take a step back and realize that it's just always going in this circle, right, then then you can point. Name it, right? You can be like, okay, I'm feeling really good right now, but I know this isn't going to last, so I'll soak it up. But I'll Deep actually said,
what did Deep say? I wanted that. I'm sorry. I was going to cut in there, didn't I?
One of our breakfasts, Deep said, what's one thing I can say that will make you happy when you're sad, or sad when you're happy?
What's one thing? Yeah, I was there for that, I think.
Were you? Was
that your house?
Yeah, I believe that was I'm not sure if you were there for that.
I might not have been.
Yeah. So we all guessed, right? We all took, we all guessed, things that might answer that question. We were all wrong. I mean, the answer is this too will pass, right?
Yeah.
Because if you remember that, I'm feeling good right now, this is going to pass, then that's going to bum you out. And if you remember that, this too will pass when you're not feeling great, then, you can get past it and you can see past it. Right. And so I think it's seeing the whole picture, right? It's looking at that whole ride, that whole circle, and being able to recognize where you're at on that, appreciate where you're at on that, name where you're at on that ride.
That's where, great. I remember coaches often saying, you're not as good as you think you are, and you're not as bad as you think you are.
Isn't that what you said to your son when he was driving the four-wheeler into the tree? You're not as good as you think you are.
I said, we hadn't even gone there yet, Rob. And I sat there and I had been fishtailing. Not that I'm as good as I think I am, but I was holding it together and I was having fun. So if you punch it, but it's not about the brake. In those situations, it's strictly about the accelerator. Yep. So take your foot off of it and let it ride, and just ride that wave. That's all it is. And it's a great, now that you're saying this, I'm going, right? Oh my God, it is, because the brake is resistance, and resistance knocks you over.
Yep.
Right? We need resistance. We don't need resistance. We need contrast in life to show us what we do want and what we don't want, and what we do want and what we don't want. But we don't need to slam on the brakes on things, because then we crash. And that's exactly what Jordan did. We're driving, and I probably had a couple of drinks and said to him, you take over. And he's doing it. And I go, and then all of a sudden I could feel it on just one. I just felt it. I go, buddy, you're not as good as you think you are. Slow down. Take your foot off the accelerator. But you're screaming over a motor. And then the next thing I know, he does it again. And all I heard myself say was, oh, shit. And then over we went and landed back on all four wheels. But the damage was done. It was all dented. It's cracked. It's
and you knew, we have that intuition before it's going to happen.
What is that? Right? I could see it coming. I just was like, and I try really hard not to be that dad that I'll call it the dick dad for lack of bigger vocabulary. But just the dick dad that's going to go, come on, you don't do it that way. I'm not here to show you. I want you to skin your knee. I want you to flip the vehicle, just not the one I'm in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's all I'm asking is don't do it with the one I'm in. And I want to show you how to do it without, but when I say slow down, it's like an electric car. Just take your foot off the accelerator. Let's not even call it a gas pedal, and we'll just try to slow down, try to downshift a little bit. We don't need to jam the brakes because that makes everything bad.
Yep.
But
I
yes.
actually just last year I brought you to the
Oh God, that was so much fun.
the mud truck party.
Yes.
Right. Which for people listening, this is like a legit mud truck party. Like these people
I've
are
never seen
yeah,
anything like this.
It's dozens of these giant monster trucks, and this guy's got this huge property with basically a pond in it that they're driving through. And so I went about a month ago to the most recent iteration of this mud truck party, and I was with my friend who invited me there, and he has his big mud truck, and we were driving around and going through the mud puddle. We went through maybe 3 times, and then before he goes through the 4th time, I'm like, this doesn't, like, he's getting cocky. This isn't going well. This I just had this feeling like we really shouldn't go through this 4th time. It's not a good idea. It was that intuition, and he went into the mud puddle, and all of a sudden you just hear it, felt like everything in the engine broke at the same time, and it just stopped. Fortunately I felt bad. I thought that he was going to be out a bunch of money, and I turned to him, and he just looks at me and goes, well, that's mud trucking.
It is part of the sport, I suppose.
Yeah,
what happened? Did something with the engine? Did it take in too much water?
It was that I don't know a lot. I'm not a gearhead, but there was I think the axle broke. There was we ended up getting towed out by another mud truck, and we were in there. We were in the puddle for a while. It was pretty. And another guy stalled next to us, and we were yelling back and forth at each other in the mud puddle. It was pretty funny.
Why don't we take one last break, and then we'll do the quotes, because I do want to hear these. The quotes are from.
So these are from the interviews that I did with global experts soon after meeting Deep. And so this is a genetic expert.
And I want to hear a little bit about the Dr. Deep visit too.
Sure.
Because I think there's more happening in that world than we're aware of.
It's always going. Every time I have a chance to connect with him, there's something cool and magical happening.
We will get to that right after this. I love this song because I think it just speaks to everything that we talk about. I almost feel like it could be a great theme for
You can
the
have
Wise
it.
Counsel.
Oh, I agree. We should play it.
All you gotta do is just reach out and grab it. If you want it, you can have it. All you got to do is just reach right out and grab it. Step out up, step into your power.
It's one of these things that I think that we often put ourselves in the role, for lack of a better term, of the victim. Like, I can't because, and that's where I always go, the arguing for our limitations. No.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Get out there and do it. Just jump.
Yep.
Jump.
I remember the first time I realized that idea. I was working as a applied behavioral sciences specialist at CDS Monarch.
Okay.
It was one of my first jobs out of my master's program. And so my job was to write behavior plans for people with disabilities living in different group homes. I have 18 group homes on my caseload, and I was in charge of the behavior plans for all of them. And I'd have to do a functional assessment, write the plan, go in, train the staff. And we had this one house on Macedon Road that it was all adults with, at the time, autistic disorder. Everything was like locked up, plexiglass on all the windows, all of the TVs were, bolted to the floor. It was, there were the doors were locked, but there were like delayed egress locks on the door. And I went in and everyone told me, like, watch out for this place. It's dangerous. You got to be really careful when you're there. And I remember going in and just feeling like, oh my, as soon as I walked in, I felt like I'm not comfortable in here, right? It's just, there's not because of the people, but because everything was locked up, and you could tell when you walked in that everyone expected the worst of whoever was in there, right? Yeah. And so I, at the time I was, in my 20s, and I didn't know any better, and so I said, well, it's got to be a way to do this better. And so we pulled together a big committee, and we ended up creating a plan that allowed us to pull back on all those restrictions and unlock the doors and get the plexiglass off the windows and all those things. And all of the people who lived there started behaving better, right? And so we saw them really live up to our expectations, right? And that was the first time that I really realized that people just have to just go out and do it, right? Like it was one of those things where, people get things done because they do them.
Yeah,
right?
You brought up too the idea of the 4-minute mile earlier, right? And one Bannister does it, and I think it was like 2 weeks later, 3 or 4 guys had done it. Yeah, but it was a mental block, and I often wonder in that situation that you're saying is we're so bad, we need this stuff, so we're going to be bad because hey, and then when the expectations raised, we're all running at a better pace and a kinder pace.
There's also this. Have you ever heard of morphic resonance?
No.
All right. So there's this concept called morphic resonance. They've done a bunch of rat studies, and what they do is they take rats from the same family, and they would put half of them in California, and they would teach them how to run through a maze, and they would have half of them on the East Coast, and they would have them run through the maze. And they found that if the rats in California, who were part of the same family, learned how to run the maze, that the rats in the East Coast would run the maze more quickly after the rats in California learned how, right? And so the theory is that there is this, especially for people who are connected in some way, that this kind of mutual learning, right? Like if one part of the unit learns something, that there's something that impacts the other part of the unit so that they're become better at it, or they become more able to, right?
And this is mice that were genetically connected.
Yep. Yeah.
It's on different coasts.
It's called morphic resonance. If you look up research in rat learning and morph resonance, it's right there.
So almost like they telepathically in some way connected on who was doing what or understanding. Doesn't it seem that way?
That's one argument.
Yeah. Because the telepathy tapes are interesting. I know you sent me another episode. I'm a little behind, but I have enjoyed, I think I've listened to 7 episodes of that. I find it fascinating.
Super cool.
It is. Really find it fascinating.
It's tough because I work with a lot of parents of people with autism, and there's some concern that this type of thing is giving people false hope
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And so I'm really cautious about who I talk to about it and how I present
Yeah.
it. But it's fascinating. It's cool.
It is
Yeah.
fascinating. I almost feel like there's some truth to that. I did a weird experiment. I had two nonverbal young men when I was subbing, and each one of them had 1-to-1 aids. And the one guy's aide went to lunch, and so he plopped him down in a chair, and he was sort of sitting near me. We just started tapping. I was like, I know you can hear me. So I start tapping, and then he's taking my hand and he's tapping, and we're doing it. And then another boy who doesn't speak, he comes over. Now we're on this giant beanbag, and that kid's laying next to me, puts his head in my lap, and is like taking my hand to hit his ribs to keep the rhythm. And I'm like, boy, there was something I was trying to say. Hey, I know you're in there. I know you're in there. And I have nothing, right? No experience. I can't say anything. But it was after hearing some of the telepathy tapes, and I went, "This is amazing," and we're underestimating things.
Yeah. Well, we'd be ignorant to think that we don't, that we understand everything, right? I think it's fair to say that we are consciously aware of maybe 1% of what's happening, right? And so, if that's the case, then yeah, there's lots of stuff that we don't understand, and we need to keep an open mind. The tricky part again is where sometimes we try to create words to describe these things, and we can kind of take it, go off on our own narrative and agenda with them, and then that's when it becomes hard to accept or believe because we kind of get in the way.
Right? Exactly. What are these are quotes from?
So yeah, we don't have to go through many.
I would like to hear some of them though.
This is after I started working with Dr. Deep.
Yes.
He somehow identified me to do these interviews with these global experts. It's hard to explain the whole context, but I had an opportunity to meet with over 20 just brilliant people, some of them Nobel laureates, people who, professors at Harvard and Cambridge and UCLA. In the new book that I'm writing, I transcribed the interviews that I did with them. And actually AI wasn't involved in the quotes that we're going to look at now, but for some of them, they were folks who didn't speak very good English. And so I ran them through AI and it cleaned it up and it made it easier to understand and pretty amazing. And so what we're trying to do with this complementary treatment methods class at Fisher is start to open the eyes of mental health counselors and other professionals to some of these concepts and think about how they can integrate them into their practice without becoming, woo woo, or without being, without losing credibility. Right. And so we're taking things like, the telepathy tapes and Reiki and all these different areas where there's plenty of evidence to suggest that there's something there, right? And we're trying to examine it critically. We're trying to think about, okay, what could this mean? What's safe for us to bring to our clients and talk about? And so these interviews that I did were kind of along those lines. And there were 3 interviews in particular that I isolated to focus on. One was with Madan Thangalavu, who is a genetic researcher out of Cambridge. He's an amazing guy who cuts up genes and studies what's inside of them. And he's really interested in the 80% of genes that we don't, actually it's higher than that. I forgot the exact percentage, but there's a high percentage of each DNA that we don't know what it does. Right. And we call it junk DNA. We don't know what it does. And he examines, that's his specialty, is looking at junk DNA and trying to figure out what it does. So he was one of the gentlemen that I interviewed. I interviewed Mauro Zapatara, who is a PhD MD from Harvard, now works at UCLA studying cerebral spinal fluid. And I interviewed John Stewart Reed, who is an acoustic physicist. He did an amazing experiment where he went into the pyramids and ran sound through the sarcophagus. And when he ran certain frequencies through the sarcophagus, hieroglyphs showed up in the sand.
Wow.
Yeah. He wrote a book about it. There were witnesses. There's and so I got to speak with all 3 of them because they all have their own particular, along with a number of other people, I mean, they all had their own particular interest and connection to Nadi and to energy and its potential uses in healing. And so the goal was, it's kind of dense stuff. And I asked the students to watch these interviews, but I knew that coming into class and saying, okay, what'd you think of the interviews, wasn't going to go very far. They were going to probably going to be pretty quiet and not be able to really talk much. And so I pulled out some of the quotes from those interviews that I thought were especially cool. And we just passed them around and we just went around in a circle. And each student would read one of the quotes. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, they would say how much it resonated with them. So, 1 would be that, it didn't really resonate with me at all. 5 would be that resonated really strongly with me for whatever reason. And then we would talk about what are some potential applications to your work? What are some potential applications to being a mental health counselor that you could pull from this? And so, I brought a few of those today because I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go.
Yeah, I never know.
And
That's fair.
And they are pretty cool. So maybe pick like 2 of them, and
Okay,
we'll do that. Maybe pick like 2 of them that you like, and we'll do the same thing with you that I did with my students.
do you want me to read it?
Go ahead. And read
Okay.
it.
This perspective shifts how we view the world. If we dwell on the idea long enough, it can transform how we interpret life and decision making. I often ask people to reflect on a seemingly simple yet profound question. Why did you choose your parents?
All right. So scale of 1 to 5, how much did that resonate with you?
Why did you choose your parents? Boy, probably I'm gonna. My knee-jerk answer is 3, but I think it's actually higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then we would again have a conversation about potential applications to mental health. Right. This is that idea that in some way
you signed a contract.
the future informs the present, right?
Yeah.
And it also speaks to that idea that yes, you made this decision, you signed a contract.
Yeah.
And so this is the person who said that was Madan Thangalavu, the genetic scientist.
Really?
Yep. And that quote comes from his own interpretation of a lot of really cool genetic research that he's done, right? And I will not do it justice, but based on cutting apart genes and looking at genes in kids and parents, he's able to make a reasonable argument that the kids probably chose their parents at some point in order for the genes to parse out like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I mean, you ever see like there's a kid that does an amazing something and becomes somebody where the parents were not even close to that, and it is something like that. All right, let's see one more.
We'll do one more. Yeah.
Okay. The concept of the observer, the observed, and the process of observation, a trinity, forms an essential foundation in Indian philosophy. Okay. The perspectives lead to the realization that the observer and the observed are not separate, but part of the same unit. The observer and the observer. Okay. If intelligence operates within this unified framework, then all intelligence is finite, yet capable of integrating with deeper realms beyond conventional understanding.
That one's deep.
I don't want to say that one was like a 6 for me because it was the last sentence. That intelligence is finite. There is an end to it.
Yep.
There's an amount to it. Yet capable of integrating with deeper realms beyond conventional understanding.
Right.
So, which almost makes it sound like it wouldn't be finite in a certain, you know what I'm saying? Going width versus depth.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, that's interesting.
It also speaks to that idea that we were just talking about. It's ironic that you chose that one, right? This idea that everything's kind of our fault.
Yeah.
Right. And this is that kind of idea that, nothing happens without not just our engagement in it, but our observation of it and our, making meaning of it. Right. There's research that says that there's certain things, like if you look at in an atom, right, there's certain, forget if it's the protons or the electrons that will only appear if we're looking at them.
Right.
If we're observing them.
Right. Otherwise we never.
All right. And so that quote speaks to some extent to that process of, nothing really is, without us making meaning of it.
Yes.
And that's
Yes,
something you
yes,
say all the
yes.
time.
Well,
too,
I say
right?
there's no meaning to any of this other than the meaning you
that we
apply
give
to it, which is basically the same thing. And I only say that because a lot of times I've seen my kids, myself, get upset about something that when you step away from it, oh gosh, that really didn't mean anything. Why did I do that? And I thought, why do I give it that meaning there? Because I'm the only one giving it that meaning.
Yep.
Nobody else is walking around with their head down. That's
Yep.
it. Can I do one more? Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
When we explore deep aspects of physics and causality, we typically assume that the past determines the present, that events unfold in a linear sequence. However, there's an intriguing counter argument. The future decides the present.
So that was also Dr. Thangaloo. So you chose, I think, two out of the three of the ones that
I
you
just
chose.
pulled them out random without really pre-reading, but
and that was maybe one of my favorite quotes from all of the interviews that I did, and probably the one that influenced my life the most and my way of thinking. And this idea that, again, and this simplifies it. We're trying to put language to it, but this idea that on some level everything's already happened, right?
Yeah.
And logically, right, linear time kind of doesn't make sense. Right. Like if the only way time exists is the way we experience it, right, then there has to be a beginning and an end. Right. In the Big Bang isn't an excuse. Right. That's a miracle in and of itself. And there had to be something before that. Right. And so this is that kind of idea that time energy flows in multiple directions. Right. And this just happens to be we happen to be living in linear time. But that time itself is way more complicated than that. Right. It's operating, it's going in every direction all the time. Right. And at some level, all of these things have already happened. So that was one of my favorite quotes from the interviews that I did.
That's a great quote. As you're saying, I often think of everything is happening right now. All of it's happening right now. And all we have is a different perspective on now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's
we call that a memory. We call that a thing, but I can't seem to fully grasp that idea.
I don't think we're supposed to be able to. Right? That's the fun of these groups.
Well,
right? We get to talk about it and try to.
I freaking love this stuff. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but I love it. I love the idea of thinking differently, looking at something differently, and not the same thing all the time. I like it because I think it does. I think as a group, it taps into a higher consciousness.
I like to think that we're creating our own morphic resonance, right? That when we have these conversations, that somehow it's even though we're having them, that it's other people are somehow benefiting from it or learning from it, or maybe thinking that we're crazy and making other decisions because of it. That's all fine. But I agree with you. It doesn't feel like when we have these conversations that they're meaningless.
No, not at all. I thoroughly enjoyed it and can't thank you enough for allowing me to come and hang out with those at those groups and be part of all this stuff. Your connection with Dr. Deep, it gets deeper. Yeah, it really does. Yeah. And the book that you're putting together,
which I need help naming because I don't want to. I'm so worried it's going to be because remember Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy. I'm trying to stay away from anything that reminds people of Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy.
It's kind of funny. It's different. It's because it is literally Deep Thoughts. But he was in New York City.
He was in So maybe 3 weeks ago now. It's a really interesting story. I haven't seen you since this happened, so I'll share the story on the podcast.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's
don't feel like you have to.
It's okay. I'm trying to think of how I can communicate it so that it comes across. So about 3 weeks ago, I got an email from a former student, and it was just really upsetting. This is a student that hated me, right? I know. Who could imagine? And so
wait, a former student that hated you.
Former student. It was 5. So it was. She had been. This person was. I'm not going to I can't give much.
No.
Right? But this student.
But then reaches out to you
5 years later.
Wow.
And was just actually emailed me and all my colleagues.
Okay.
And just said the title of the email was a true story about Rob Rice. And she talked about 3 things that I did or taught that really upset her while she was in the program. Right. And one of them was this idea that we can heal ourselves, even like digestive issues and back pain, and a lot of physical issues can be attributed to our mental health. This person really didn't like that idea. They had some of their own physical issues and felt like that was minimizing their physical aspect, right? Yeah. And then a couple other things that I won't get into that are all part of the literature, part of teaching this work. But for this particular person at that time in their life, they weren't in a place to really hear it the way I intended for them to hear it. And so it's really it was really hard for me to hear, right? This idea that there was someone that was out there for 5 years.
5 years.
5 years later, yeah. So I was like really beat up for this day, because it felt like it's just this person's been out there for 5 years just hating me, right? and I had no idea, and it made me think, like, who else is out there and hates me? One of my things, one of my problems is I think I like to be liked, right? And so this is really hard it was really hard to accept. And so that evening, after really just kind of beating myself up all day and wondering, geez, 5 years ago, how could I have said that differently? Right. Why did this person choose to target me? I got a call from Deep, and he said, Rob, I had a feeling that you needed to talk to me. And so he basically just called me and said, I had a feeling that you needed to talk, which I absolutely did. Or actually, he said, I had a feeling that you needed a session with me. He said, coincidentally, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. He said, we must be, on the same wavelength. And I said, this is awesome. That's great. Thank you. Yes, I really do need to hear from you right now. I'll take any support that I can get. I'm feeling pretty awful about myself. Talked to him for a little while. He actually reiterated some of what we talked about earlier in terms of how sometimes when you're at a particularly high frequency and you're feeling really good, people who are especially vulnerable and not in a good place, right, will tend to, find you and try to bring you down. And that was one of the ways that he was trying to help me make sense of that email and my role in it and some of those things. Well, long story short, I learned his itinerary. He was going from DC to New York City, and then he was going to Miami to meet with some people at the University of Miami, and then back up to New York City. And I asked him if I could see him. And he said, sure, come. This is the day that you can come. And so I arranged for it so that I could go down and see him. Fisher is super supportive of all this work and allowed me to use my professional development money to go down and have a meeting with him and do my thing.
Students hate you.
And so I went down to see him, and it was just another one of these magical visits, as all of them seem to have been. I got to my hotel, gave him a call. He said, this is where I'm. He stays at the ambassador to Pakistan's house when he's in New York City, which is on the Upper East Side. And so I had brought a couple of Cuban cigars for the ambassador to Pakistan because I knew he really liked Cuban cigars, and I was excited to see him. He said, this is where I'm at. And I left the hotel to go walk to meet him there. And within 5 minutes, he comes pulling right by me in a black van. He's not driving. He's in the back. It was an Uber of some sort. And he looks out the window. He said, Dr. Rob, come in the van. Come with me. We're going somewhere very important. I don't even know how he found me. I don't know how he knew where I was, but he knew that I was on my way to that house, and he came and picked me up. He said, we've got someone really important that we need to meet. I said, okay, here we go. I'm doing this again. And so on the way there, he told me a little bit about the person that I'd be meeting. Made it sound like he was pretty important in the Indian healthcare. Turns out he's one of the most important people in Indian healthcare. And then we get to the building and greeted at the base of the building and go up. It's a second time in my life I've been in one of these amazing New York penthouses. The first time was also with Dr. Deep a year before. And you get to the top of the building, and the elevator door opens up, and we're just in this person's house, and it's amazing because you've got floor to ceiling glass all the way around, and you just see the New York City skyline around you. And there's this probably at least 80-year-old Indian gentleman and what I perceive to be his wife sitting next to him at the far end of the room. And so we go in. Deep sits down next to the gentleman, the older gentleman, and I sat next to Deep. They started speaking Hindu. I had no idea what they were saying. I didn't know. But I was just kind of, it gave me a chance to take a mental break and just kind of admire the situation that I was in and where I was at. And then over the course of the next hour, like more people just started coming into the room and sitting on the floor. And there's different family members of this gentleman. His son came in. His son actually went to Cornell and lives in New York City now. It was his apartment. He came in. His kids came in and gave Deep a hug and said, "I've got my magic water." And, you could tell that, Deep, it was really connected to all these people and they thought highly of him. And so at some point I noticed that everyone except for me and this guy and his wife and Dr. Deep were sitting on the floor. I mean, we were all sitting and I felt I felt bad about that. I didn't feel right that I was in this other person's house and that I was sitting up in the chair and everybody else was sitting on the floor. And so I sat down on the floor. And as soon as I did that, this older gentleman, the 85-year-old guy, I don't know how old he is. He might not be that old. But he started giggling and just did a beeline for me and sat down on the ground next to me, sat down on the floor next to me and just like held my hand and looked at me laughing, just looked at me giggling and laughing while he held my hand. And I'm like, this is really odd. But again, kind of one of those, like when I met Deep for the first time where it was like, this is really strange, but this just feels oddly comfortable. And like, there's something going on here that I'm not understanding. And if I just sit and be open, then I'm going to understand it. Right.
Yep.
And so this went on for about 5 minutes. At some point, he grabbed my hands and put them together and started going like this. And then he grabbed his hands and he started going like this. And like when we were kids and we tried to make like fart noises with our hands, right? He was like going like that. And and then he grabs my palm and he starts pressing on my palm. And he goes, that the palm connected to the brain, He said, "I can see you're anxious." He said, "This will help." And so now I'm doing this. He's doing this. Everybody in the room starts like slapping their hands together and they're all laughing. And it was just like the wildest thing, right? Like everyone was just in it together, doing this ridiculous thing that I've never seen before, but probably should know about. I should have, I guess that's, if I were an acupuncturist, I would realize that there's a connection between the palms and the brain.
The wrists, yeah.
And so we were all doing this. The next morning, I went to Deep's for breakfast, and the cook who cooks for the ambassador from Pakistan made us some fish and some other things, and I'm eating the fish, and Dr. Deep is kind of like an Italian grandmother. Like he touches all your food and gives it to you and makes sure that you try everything. I'm eating the fish and he says, "It's really good, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it's good." He goes, "That's Bobby Kennedy's wife's fish." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "When I was in DC, I was meeting with Robert Kennedy Jr. and his wife gave me this fish." And so somehow, like, I'm sitting in the ambassador to Pakistan's house on the Upper East Side, eating fish from Bobby Kennedy's wife. No idea how Deep ended up with them or how she thought to give him fish or how I ended up eating it, but it's just another great example of one of these.
Did you ask her? Oh no, you didn't get it.
I didn't get to talk to her. Yeah, just to him.
How about Curb? She was in Curb, right? Cheryl Hines.
I thought, oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
She was Larry David's wife.
I forgot about that.
Curb, and then they get divorced.
Apparently, she's really interested in Nadi and some of the stuff that Dr. Deep does.
Good.
So, yeah. So he's you know him. He's like, everything's gonna be wonderful. She'll talk to her husband, and he'll make sure that people in the U.S. start to learn this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the resistance to it is also interesting because where is it coming from? It's fear. It's really what it is. At the
money.
Yeah. Money's another one, right? So you're right. So if we can strike the fear and make you hate it, whatever. Yeah, that's all true. I think that's amazing. I'm sorry about the student thing, but I find the student piece of this very interesting to me. In that, to me, it feels like someone who is arguing for their limitations. Now, I don't know this person, but I say that because what you're teaching is telling them they have the power within themselves to correct some of these things. And they're mad because they've been taught their whole lives, no, I need the doctor and I need medication and I need this and I need my mom to bring me my inhaler, whatever. And I'm not saying that any of those things are bad. Please understand that. But if we can raise things and get off that and live, you've got the power. And it's interesting that someone wouldn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
No, but how resistant people are. This person, it's not isolated. I'm sure there's others. Not saying about
I'm
you.
sure there are.
I got to think there's got to be at least 10% of the class hates you. I'm kidding.
No, well, and that's, when you read evaluations, you get the 19 or 7 out of 7 and everybody, and then you got that one that doesn't like you, and that's always the one where your eye goes, and that's the one that you remember the most.
Sure, of course.
I think if you're not, and this is partly me, talking to myself, making myself feel better, but I think partly if you're not pissing a few people off, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Right. In order to really learn and change, you need to be uncomfortable sometimes. Right.
Yeah.
And so if there's the resistance at all, it would be the resistance to being uncomfortable. And I think that's important. It
is interesting to me when I hear this stuff, but then at the same time, you try to go, well, let's say I am the person who has whatever it is. And now you're telling me I have the power to cure it, but I've been on mom and dad's insurance and I hear them bitching and complaining about the expense of the doctors and the blah, 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 and this and that. And, this makes no sense. And you're teaching it to me in a formal educational center. Yeah. What is wrong with you? Right. And I would say, what is wrong? What has been wrong for so long that we haven't taught this or made it more readily acceptable? We're not telling you to believe it. Do what you want, but it's an alternative, and that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at this point, that particular idea isn't even an alternative, right? Like there's plenty of research that says psychotherapy can be more effective for certain types of pain than medication.
Okay.
So, I think we're coming along, right? The course at Fisher is one step in the right direction for teaching this kind of stuff. And I think that's where we're at. It's exciting. If everybody believed this and it was all out there and we knew everything, then we wouldn't be able to have these exciting conversations.
No, but they are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll leave it there. That's true. Okay. Exciting conversations for sure. Dr. Rob Rice, the head of the mental health department at St. John Fisher University. And please go get the book, Cliff Notes, Contemplating Life's Meaning on the Edge. It's a great read. That whole scene, like how you just turn into the Flash. And the one I felt like I just needed to talk to you a little bit more about that.
You're acknowledged in that. You read the manuscript for that, the original, and gave me feedback.
Yes. And then but I thought that was wow. One of these. We all have the power. You got to tap in.
You're the reason why I kept the fart story in there.
That's right. I forgot. You were on that's like the greatest story ever. She's getting a massage. Uncomfortable. Male masseuse comes in.
Yeah. Ripped a big one. My head was stuck in that padded toilet seat. I couldn't move.
But ripped it and just said, "Oh, excuse me."
Oh, it was terrible. And it happened when he was doing the percussion thing.
Oh, God, it's so great. I forgot about that. Well, it's your fault that I'm actually trying to do more because I thought, Rob's right. Use the time while you got it. Make hay while the sun shines. Let's go.
You're doing it. You know what you're doing.
For Dr. Rob Rice, I'm Bill Moran. We'll see you tomorrow.
They wouldn't have let us in, and now we landed in Memphis like original sin. Elvis Presley Boulevard to the Graceland gates.